Okay.
There we go. Okay, we are live.
Yay.
And all right, hang on, let me flip the camera here. There we go. We are indeed live.
Yay. Well, welcome everybody to another broadcast Team Alpha. It's Casual Wednesday.
Where is Nori?
I can't come on the camera right now. I can only do audio.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
So, as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, we are broadcast Team Alpha. We're having fun bringing you cutting edge conversations while exploring the quantum possibilities. And remember, we used the word quantum before it was like a household name.
We were quantum before quantum was cool.
Have you noticed how cool quantum has become, right? It's crazy. So it's the Wednesday show, yay. It's Casual Wednesday, and there's nothing too serious going on, but we have some interesting stuff going on tonight. And we'd like to invite you to connect with us. Connect with us on broadcastteamalpha.com. Connect with us, please, on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube station. We are headed toward the 3,000 mark, and you may notice that there is a new function. It's called the Super Chat function. If you would like to support us that way, we would be very grateful. And if not, we're just really grateful that you're here. So without any further unnecessary words, I'm going to toss it over to Aage to tell you guys about the really cool out of space, otherworldly stuff we're going to be talking about tonight. Hey, Aage. Hey, Tom. Hey, Dan. Yay.
Nori!
Yay.
Hello, Dan. Hello, Aage.
Hey.
Hello.
Yeah, I tell you, this is going to be fun. It's going to be very interesting. I'm sorry we're a little bit late because it's all my fault. My computer is so old, it's run by squirrels, and one of them got sick, so I had to get a new one. But I'm up and now in business, so we're good. We're going to have Dan Willis here with us, and he studied the very latest disclosure, and I'm calling it that, disclosure documents coming out, the Wilson documents. And I'm going to make the claim here that we are right now in the middle of disclosure. It is a process. It's a longer process that will be carried out for maybe a little longer, and we don't know how long, maybe another year or maybe 3 weeks and 4 days, we don't know. But something is going to happen here, and this is what they're preparing us for. So we're getting these documents, and there's some very interesting stuff in it, and Dan has studied that. And gosh, I tell you, you don't want to hear me anymore. Dan, floor is yours for right now. It's just
Before we get to
what
Dan,
you have studied and what you come up with.
I really welcome aboard, Dan. This is
Welcome,
really
Dan.
a critical moment because there are those that are describing this leak as kind of a leak of the century type moment that are really saying that this is extremely significant. And so I want you, if you can, as we go through this, to explain why this would somebody, and Richard Dolan is who I'm quoting, would make this tremendous claim that this is so groundbreaking. So that'd be great if you can go into that tonight. And howdy to Nori and howdy to Aage.
Hey, guys. It was a crazy start to the show.
Good introduction, Tom. Yes, it is, as Dolan said, it is a leak of the century, you could say, in what it implicates. It has a long history, and basically this has been revealed through the years, but people, Dr. Greer's been doing this since the early 90s, and he's revealed this. Myself as one of the top secret witnesses, that testified back in 2001. I was aware of this whole interaction that was going on between Vice Admiral Tom Wilson and, and Dr. Greer and Dr. Edgar Mitchell, and how he was extremely furious and upset because in his legal authority and jurisdiction and oversight as the head of intelligence in the J2
Greer has
position.
been talking about this for years. He has made this part of his showcase. That discussion, that very discussion, has been one of Greer's highlights that he always seems to talk about in his conferences.
Absolutely, Tom. It's critical. It's critical because what this document is basically an exchange of conversation after Admiral Tom Wilson retired with astrophysicist by the name of Eric Davis. Eric Davis is working on some advanced propulsion, very high technologies. Anyway, they had a conversation in a car, and apparently it was like, he taped it and then transcribed it, it looks like. And basically, let me maybe go back a little bit of history here about how this whole thing came about and how that conversation came into being. Going back to 1991, there was a group that held a private meeting outside of Area 51 for a group of researchers. And what happened was they brought in the Japanese television network and a whole bunch of media and stuff like that. They were investigating what was going on in Area 51. Nellis Air Force Base, also known as Area 51, sent out a classified NRO advisory document to all the base personnel that if any of the personnel interact with any of these people, that there would be, reprimanded. And so this classified National Reconnaissance Organization document basically had a list of unacknowledged special access programs, such as Magi Ops, Cosmic Ops. Let me see if I can share some of these here with you. There is, let's see if I can show a list here. If you can, it doesn't really work too well. Anyway, you can see some of these Royal Ops, Cosmic Ops, Magi Ops, Magi Ops. There's a whole list of these that what Dr. Stephen Greer did was he sent this to Admiral Tom Wilson to investigate before the meeting. And when he investigated, he found that these operations did exist. Oh, by the way, that same group that met at Area 51, 2 years later, I was at that same group meeting, and it was the first time Bob Lazar ever came, who was working at S4 reverse engineering facility. And it was the first time he became public, and I videotaped it, clandestinely for the first time.
You released that video recently. That I know you posted that on Facebook.
Yeah, no video recording was allowed whatsoever, and I broke the rules, and I recorded the full 2 hours and put it up.
You have the heart of a true photographer, my friend, because if they say no photographers allowed, the first thing the photographer wants to do is, oh my gosh, that's where I need to go right there. That's where I want to go right there. So kudos to you on that.
Anybody can view it at thewebmatrix.net in the 1993 timeline. 1993 was a very active time of a whole lot of stuff going on. But back to Admiral Wilson, when he inquired into this, he found out there was civilian contractors that were overseeing these projects that were run by corporations, not by our military. And he said, "Sir, you do not have a need to know." And he said, "The hell I don't. I'm the head of intelligence. I have my legal authority." But he was not on a special list. And he had a meeting with them, one of the big contractors, which appears to be Lockheed, that basically was showing all the people that were on the list. And on this list, there was no presidents, no people in Congress, nothing in the military, all basically contractors. And so what happened was...
Hey, Dan?
Yes?
I noticed the word they used in the list, they called it a bigot list. Are you familiar with that term and why they called it that, a bigot list?
It's a list of people who are approved to be on a special access program. If you're not on the bigot list, you're not. It doesn't matter who you are. You can be the president, you can be a head of intelligence, or the head CIA director, such as in 1993. Also was happening. Dr. Greer was meeting with CIA director James Woolsey. All this came about because of Lawrence Rockefeller wanted to have the Clinton administration have disclosure. And as Sarah McLennan, who sponsored the National Press Club event, famously said, when she asked about why aren't you doing anything about this, he said, Sarah, there's a secret government within the government and I don't control it. And his CIA director, James Woolsey, found out that he was denied access. He was CIA director was being denied access. Dr. Greer happened to write an article on some advanced physics that he believed how, he was just a country doctor from Virginia, he says, but he wrote an article about these transdimensional physics, which happened to resonate with some of the people, and got him into a meeting with the CIA director, in which he brought a huge stack of documents. And the CIA director said, I know the subject's real. I'm trying to figure out how the hell why I can't gain access to this thing. And
that was where that whole concept that really kind of got expanded was this wording about being read in to the project. You had to be read in, that they had to brief you and take you through a protocol to get you into that project. You couldn't just talk about it, and you couldn't just show up and say, hey, what's happening?
That's correct.
You had to be read into the whole
That's
program.
What the Admiral was requesting. He wanted to be read into the project.
Right.
And he was being denied, just like the CIA director was being denied. And the CIA director said to Dr. Greer, well, how can we disclose what we don't have access to? And so it was 1993 that they started the Witness Archival Project, starting to collect hundreds of witnesses, of which I'm only one of hundreds of military and intelligence witnesses. So it was actually the 1997 meeting at the Pentagon with astronaut Edgar Mitchell, Dr. Greer, who was briefing the Admiral on this whole thing after he found out that he was denied access. So what the Admiral told him, who was very frustrated and very angry, because he should have jurisdiction over this, anybody, he said, if you can get your people who know about this matter on record, and you have their permission to go to the media with this group is illegal, quote unquote. In other words, it's not being overseen by our legal constitutional government. So this essentially greenlighted the Disclosure Project, which back in 1993, when they met with military advisors, they made the decision to collect hundreds of witnesses. It was...
Okay, so Dan.
Yes.
And I hate to jump in, but what I want to really kind of get to is the significance of this document that's been, quote, leaked. First off, how do you feel about the authenticity of this whole process of everything that has been, quote, leaked? And how do you feel it corroborates everything that your folks like yourself, Dr. Greer, and others have been saying for years? Now it seems to be this is now documented. Is that the significance, that it was actually documented, that it was actually, there is a trail now, a paper trail?
Highly authentic, highly corroborated with so many different elements in this whole thing. It's highly authentic document, and we're just about to get there. And so after the Admiral retired, he had this meeting with astrophysicist Eric Davis, and he did the recording. And essentially, in this conversation, when the Admiral looked into this, he said he was told that if he didn't drop it, he could see losing rank and seeing an early retirement. And that they talked about technology that was not of this earth, that was being reverse engineered, that, presidents or members of Congress or have had access to this. A lot of interesting key elements in this. Basically, a couple of little elements here. technology not of this earth. The document also confirmed the 1997 meeting with Vice Admiral Wilson, with Dr. Greer, Lieutenant Commander Miller, and Dr. Mitchell.
So this
And
would
it
be
also confirmed the existence of the MJ-12 control group.
wow.
It
But
is
this,
confirmed.
but Greer's talked about this for years, and it's like I don't know if this same information is in his Dead Man's Trigger or not. But does this coming from this other sources now corroborates a lot of what he has said?
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. So yeah, the MJ-12 group was confirmed. Also confirmed about one of the witnesses that one of the 20 witnesses that went before the media, based on Admiral Wilson's go ahead on this whole thing, was Mark McCandish, who they were aware of these alien reproduction vehicles
The
that were
ARVs, right?
made back in the early 50s. So this was
And the design of those things is so simple. When you look at the design of it, you're like, it's basically a capacitor.
That's correct. Yeah, I sat down at the Hilton with Mark and went over all the technical details. It's a mercury tube that has a Tesla configuration where the capacitor is along the bottom, and basically it starts the mercury going into this mass canceling effect that created.
That's what they got from the Vimana. Is that the Vimana principle? This high pressurized mercury.
Absolutely. Mercury is a key element which Nazi Germany employed. Several submarines were sunk with one with 67 tons, or 33 tons of sealed mercury, most likely going down to the Antarctic base. So yeah, mercury was used in the Vermanas, mercury is used in the ARVs, and it was also used in the Hanabu and like that the Nazi Germany was using. Also an interesting ELF reference to about UFOs are real and the so-called alien abductions are not real, and I'll go into that a little bit later.
In fact, that was a point of controversy with some other UFO. With Dolan had mentioned that as well, that maybe it was a subjective opinion, or was he alluding to the fake abductions that were going on?
Right. Alien abductions not being real is, according to Dr. Greer, MILAB operations with advanced anti-gravity technology. It allows them to create stagecraft, is what they call it, to give the perception to the abductees of their extraterrestrials. This is to support the PSYOP, psychological operations, for future planned false flag alien threat scenario. Notice the word threat going around a lot. Dr. Greer personally experienced the stagecraft, and a number of witnesses have also given him details of these operations. Let's see, we're going into...
I want to just jump in with something here, a little bit of an addition to, and that what we see is that these special access programs, the people that run that, they are answerable to none. They are totally self-sufficient, make their own decisions, and no oversight. But there's this concept also that there's only two things that is important in government, that's money and power, not necessarily in that order. How do you think they got the money to run these programs? Because corporations, they don't run without money. I believe that I may be an answer to that. That comes from the Federal Reserve Bank. They just give them the money, no questions asked, because there is no oversight of the Federal Reserve. There is oversight of black projects within Congress, somewhat.
You have to think about the 300 families that run some of the major corporations of the world, these transnational corporations. In fact, it was during Eisenhower's administration that one of his staff members, one of our witnesses actually, Brigadier General Stephen Lovkin, said that basically Eisenhower got sold out, that he knew that he had lost control to the corporations, And, as he did his famous speech about, beware of the misplaced powers within the industrial military complex, he's talking about the transnational corporations that essentially, took control.
Yeah.
So, if you look at some of the history, when I guess going back to the timeline after this document, by the way, just got released this month, in June 2019. It got released much earlier, but it went public, on the internet, and so it's like all over the buzz, on this whole thing, because what it's implying is that we've got these operations that are completely illegal, not overseen by our legal constitutional government, that have no checks and balances. When we went to Washington, basically largest event in the history of the National Press Club. The first hour was jammed by the NSA, according to sources. We were talking about how our legal government was. We had 22 cameras in the back row, and what we were saying was that our legal government, presidents, CIA directors, we had proof of, are being denied access. That we have there's a base on the other side of the moon. 57 species of ETs already been categorized. We have alien reproduction vehicles that can go faster in light. They were built back in the 50s. NASA airbrushing the UFOs out, and that the astronauts are told quiet. What happened on the moon, and the nukes are being shut down. All of this was disclosed, but you'd wonder how in the 22 cameras back there, that wouldn't just like shake up the entire public and like, what? But what they did was, the mainstream media is controlled, as we know, by the Central Intelligence Agency and the whole network. And they basically did what a limited hangout, so CNN and the rest of them basically said, want to have a congressional hearing based on the reality of UFOs, because you can't get any of this stuff out and the public sees it. Now look at the media today. Now they're saturating it. The same group, CNN, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post, the long list. Now they're saturating it with putting awareness of the UFO matter. The Navy, which, that's my testimony about, spacecraft coming out of our oceans, and secret classified reports going to the Chief of Naval Operations when I was in Naval Communications.
But Dan,
yes,
real quick, what do you think lends the biggest, for the average layman out there that's trying to wrap their minds around, maybe explaining this to others, maybe they have a better handle of it, and they're trying to explain it to people who really don't understand all of this. So this is part of disclosure, that it gets out to the mainstream. So as it hits the mainstream now, there are these various narratives that are starting to dominate. So what do you think the biggest, when Dolan says this is a bombshell, or that this is the largest thing happening in a long time, what makes it that? What is it that makes it that monumental? And what's the impact?
The key point is that here you have someone in such a high position, for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, head of intelligence, being denied access, and this being confirmed by multiple sources. This meaning, why this is so explosive is because that means there is a rogue element that is, according to the Admiral's term, illegal, that's operating with extremely advanced technology, while the world is burning fossil fuels, nuclear, coal, and all this stuff, while we're still using airplanes and and cars and all this obsolete technology. When I interviewed Emery Smith, he was talking about, he's working at 173 level deep underground military base below Kirkland Air Force Base, working alongside extraterrestrials, and the technology is unbelievable. What they had. So they've been doing this for a long time, and I guess this leads into how this whole thing. I've been researching a lot, and there's a certain amount of you can't say for sure because of the nature of the subject is so highly compartmentalized and there is disinformation. But there's a heck of a lot of indicators that indicate what happened from the end of World War II that brought us up to this current place where we have our legal government doesn't have control over these operations that are holding within these deep underground and other operations
Or these
advanced
breakaway
technology that the
civilizations.
world could use.
You got breakaway civilizations that are probably at this point, at the initial stage, they depended upon siphoning whatever tax dollars they could or through the whatever black projects. But I was thinking about this, that maybe some of those projects now, they're so spun off, they're self-sufficient, they're on their own. That now
They
they
keep
are.
revealing the trillions of dollars. I heard as one figure up to 21 trillion. And then you think about, all the opium production, drug stuff, even when I was in combat action.
But if this
Vietnam,
has been going
there
on for
were
80 years, think about it, for the last 80 to 100 years that this has been going on, those civilizations that whatever colonization they may have started, maybe they have bases somewhere on other planets, who the hell knows, right? They've got all this stuff going on. Do they really need us and our tax dollars to make any of it happen at this point? I doubt it. I
No.
doubt it. I doubted it.
Not at all. Not at all. And you have to think about it. If they have these secret operations, and indications are Nazi Germany had anti-gravity in 1934, and it wasn't
Right.
until 20 years later, in October of 1954, that the U.S. had the technology. So if, you look back, here I'm going to take what if. I'm going to do a what if scenario. What if Nazi Germany knew that there's no way it could defeat the industrial might of the United States? We could build 10 planes and tanks for every one that they could do. We could outnumber them. And the Nazis always thought of, approaching things on a qualitative rather than a quantitative level. So the Nazis had developed advanced
Advanced Skype
sorry about that.
technology.
The Nazis had developed advanced technology that allowed them to actually intimidate the Truman and Eisenhower administration. It seems that at the end of World War II, there was a number of things that happened. The Nazis had a plan called worldview warfare, where they planned to infiltrate into the United States and take it over from within. 1944, he had Operation Eagle Flight, huge amounts of money, assets, and they set up 750 front corporations, which you have to wonder who are some of the major corporations we know today. 1945, they brought, through the help of Allen Dulles, the 3,000 Nazi spies into the CIA. Everybody knows about Operation Paperclip, where they brought them into NASA. And then 1946, Xavier Dorisch, who was Hitler's mastermind in making underground facilities, started in New Mexico, right where Emery was working, Monsanto Mountains out there, and started tunneling out and making these huge, massive underground complexes ever since that time. That's a lot of time. So that, they've been, according to some of the witnesses like Phil Snyder, they had, back when he was alive, before they suicided him, they had 130 some of these huge, massive underground facilities. Okay, so you go along the timeline. 1946, Rockefeller Foundation comes in, completely rewrites the history of World War II, the hide, the Nazi, the connection with the banking cabal, and the escape going down to Antarctica, and yes.
Now, I love this museum because you take us there, and I love wandering these halls of that museum. So you take all of that lore, all of that history in this whole ufology thing, and Dolan is saying this now is an explosive moment that will now be quoted as one of the ongoing pieces of this lore, the Roswell incident, everything you've described, this history, this timeline. This is now a big spike on that timeline.
Yeah, all these indicators seem to be consistent. Even William Tompkins said they infiltrated the pharmaceutical industry. You've got after they rewrote the history of World War II, the hides for in the future, the 1950 Operation Mockingbird, which we have today of the mainstream media, Complete Control, 1951, Project Dove, Hollywood, started with The Day the Earth Stood Still, all the evil alien movies you've seen, throughout
Well,
the
actually,
decades.
now, a quick question. You mentioned that. In fact, I've heard you mention that before. I don't see Day the Earth Stood Still as an evil alien movie.
No, no, no. I saw it as a positive myself.
Yeah,
Yes, I agree.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was more of a
There was
introduction.
Earth versus the Flying Saucers. Now that was classic
Right,
sci-fi,
right,
and they were coming and they were pissed and they were taking over. So and they
right,
were destroying
exactly.
Washington D.C. and everything else. But that wasn't that also in the same time frame that there was that flyover that some say was Hanabu's over Washington D.C. to kind of send a signal, leave us the f alone. Wasn't that what that was?
Right, right. That was German discs that in 1952, July, fly over Washington, D.C.
Right.
That was basically to intimidate Truman. And this was, and they could intimidate him because look what happened to Admiral Byrd with Operation
Down in
High Jump.
Antarctica. Right.
They came limping back after being attacked with the flying discs. You have 1951 Invention Secrecy Act, which today we have thousands of these national security orders, solutions to get off of nuclear, oil, and coal. They suppress them under the guise of national security. I had 10 years experience with meeting with scientists and inventors, so I can speak firsthand of, scientists being murdered, getting national security orders. I've witnessed this. And then you have 1954, you have JANUP 146, which you and I, Tom, were, because of the Espionage Act, if we report an unidentified flying object, we'd be under penalty of this Espionage Act. So they set that up to keep the secrecy for the military. And then they have 1954, also a former Nazi SS officer sets up these yearly Bilderberg meetings, which, we have going on every single year.
And Dan, you and I both know firsthand when they say you will not tell, they don't start with the bullet. They start with Leavenworth. And if that's not enough to get your attention, then they bring around the treason, the firing squad, and everything else, and it gets worse. So a lot of people wonder, how can they have kept it secret all these years?
They haven't.
Well, and they haven't, but for the most part, a lot of what has been kept secret, the ping pong, it's like a bunch of ping pong balls in a swimming pool. You can't keep them all down at once, and a few are going to start popping up, and that's what's happening. So
I think a lot has come out, but the government's advantage is that whenever they deny something, things go to sleep. So deny, 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 and it has worked for them.
Well, yeah, you have to think about this entire the Weltanschauungskrieg or worldview warfare. You have to think about the elements. If you control the media, you control education, control Hollywood, control inventions that come out. You control the pharmaceutical industry. You have to think about some of the Nazi eugenics. If you have your people in these high positions, you basically have created this world in which you're born into that you have no idea that these things are going on. I mean, in 2001, I had no idea. When I testified, I had no idea of, Operation Mockingbird was controlling that they were going to sanitize everything. These witnesses that were each willing to testify under oath before Congress, we stated. In fact, there was 21 witnesses originally.
So Dan, let me ask you something too. In light of this, we had the last fall, we had DeLong, I think, did a major announcement, and now we have this about 6-7 months later. So do you think that there's going to be another unveiling of some kind in the near future? Do you think something else is going to pop, or do you think this is it for a while?
Oh, absolutely. I just wanted to finish the thought on one of the witnesses, the 21 witnesses, of which only 20 testified. The 21st witness was Daniel Morris, who was in the NRO, and he was what you were saying. They go around and they were basically the men in black that if you had an experience, they'd warn you off, and if you didn't be quiet, they'd send another team in to handle it. And if that didn't take care of it, there was another team that would make sure it was handled. So I just wanted to concur with what you were saying on that. But he got up to the microphone in front of all those cameras, and he went, ah, and they had to take him off the stage. So he just like freaked.
Who was this again?
At the National Press Club.
Oh, right.
Daniel Morris, yeah. So what happened was in 1955, essentially, the Nazis basically infiltrated, working with the transnational corporations that General Lovkin said Eisenhower lost control to. And so what happened was Nelson Rockefeller completely restructured the CIA MJ-12 operations so that Eisenhower no longer had jurisdiction, and no president after that had jurisdiction, as Kennedy found out, 10 days after he tried to get access to the information. And as Eisenhower found out when he tried to, find out what was going on at Area 51 and S4, where he threatened to go in with the army and invade Area 51 until they let 2 agents go in there and show that they were reverse engineering the ET craft and the German, and that
we've
there
read
was
that story.
extraterrestrials.
I'm curious. What do you think now it would take to break that yoke that even the presidents can't have this information? I think it would take some kind of public outcry, or even a president coming on national television saying, this is what exists, but they won't even let me have access. I think it would take that kind of public exposure in order for it to break that spell, if you will, that they've all been locked out, is to expose it to the American people.
Because they don't want to see it. They don't want to see it happen. Look what happened at the National Press Club. They completely did what's called a limited hangout. The part they hung out was that extraterrestrials, UFO craft, we believe are real. But all the explosive testimony that I mentioned earlier was completely sanitized. So you have to wonder about today. Part of the document that you brought up about the alien abductions not being real, and Dr. Greer's belief that this could be a future false flag event, which is, it was revealed at the National Press Club that they plan to have, the Soviets, and then there's terrorists. I don't know what 9/11 was. And then you have, rogue countries. I don't know what North Korea was. And then they're going to have the extraterrestrial threat.
Well, wasn't it also
and it's all a lie.
Wasn't the idea that these global or earthbound terrorists, people are going to get tired of that. They had to elevate it to something, and where else can you go but up? And so that's when they came up with the extraterrestrial false flag, was that, okay, people are going to get sick of this. You can only do the terrorism thing on the planet so long. We need something as a unifier. And that was going to be used as a unifier. Is that right? Is that the way it's been framed?
Oh, like Ronald Reagan's speech, imagine if we had an alien threat,
Exactly,
and as Clinton said on Jimmy Kimmel, let's just hope it's not like Independence Day, the major psyops, movie.
Yeah.
We all make nice, when the aliens come, and we all join together as one. So they have this plan of this one world government for some time, and it's not necessarily the best for humanity and some of the plans that they have. I think they want to reduce the population dramatically. And,
I think there are 2 NWOs. There's the NWO that the truther community, the conspiracy communities are all memorized, and I understand that part of it. But I think maybe there is a cosmic NWO that we could move towards. This is just me talking. This is just my opinion.
It's happening right now on the show. Yes,
there is a positive NWO that's possible, a new world order that is basically just people getting along and trying not to hurt one another. I think that's a better NWO. So
that's the only reason I do these shows ever so often. It just help. My little tiny piece is to help seed and have other people do their own research and find out, just like I did and many other people finding out, like, oh my God, we're living in this strange science fiction reality. Only thing is, it's not fiction; it's real. Here's a couple of indications I thought were, since they're, this program that came out of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program that came out of the Pentagon that got revealed with the Tic Tac that you mentioned, with Luis Elizondo and To the Stars Academy and all this stuff.
They won't go away. And we need to get them on the show.
Let's see. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, here we go. Here's some indications. Back in 1967, November 20th, LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, the good old man who, escalated the Vietnam War, so I had to go over there. The report from Iron Mountain got leaked. And I was searching through it, and on page 51, if you go to thewebmatrix.net, you can see all these references and notes and, everything. It says, quote, "It has been hotly argued that such a menace would offer the last best hope of peace," etc. By the way, this report was pretty much to talk about
Can you do a screen share, Dan? On yours, can you do a screen share? If you want to, you're welcome to do a screen share if you want to show something.
I'm not set up right now.
Oh, okay.
It's just a short. Anyway, the idea is that they wanted to have, this report was basically that they needed to create ongoing conflict in order, it kind of feeds the military industrial system, And so anyway, it was saying, it's been hotly argued that such a menace would offer the last best hope of peace, etc., by uniting mankind against the danger of destruction by creatures from other planets or from outer space. This is an official document. Experiments have proposed to test the credibility of an out-of-the-world invasion threat. It is possible that some of the more difficult to explain flying saucer incidents of recent years were in fact early experiments of this kind. And you have to think about, in the 50s, Adamski and all these different witnesses are saying, these people are coming out and they're speaking in High German and they have Nazi swastika, insignias and stuff on the craft and things like that. Basically, they were testing the people to see how easily, this was connected with Alan Dulles, who was going around telling scientists that were trying to debunk this to back off. Because it's like the flat earth theory, it's one of the CIA things to see how easily people can be fooled. That was in 1967. 1977, when Werner von Braun on his deathbed gave the testimony that they had planned, he saw the plans that they were planning on.
Wasn't that his secretary she was part of the whole witness testimony collection? I forget her name.
Dr. Carol Rosen.
I'm sorry?
Dr. Carol Rosen you're talking
about?
Correct.
Yeah, she's testified on behalf of that, and she worked for Von Braun, I believe, right?
She was his spokesman.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would say over and over to her that, first would be the Soviet Union, which we know was a lie because Nazi General Reinhard Gehlen, along with Alan Dulles and General Wild Bill Donovan, they were feeding Truman all this false estimates in order to build up billions of dollars, trillions of dollars into the Cold War. And so that was the first lie.
He also testified to the fact that NASA was blotting out pictures of the moon. A lot of the NASA pictures. She was the one that testified about that actually existed.
That was Donna Hare, who worked 20 years at NASA. Okay. They were airbrushing the UFOs out.
But I think Carol Rosen also spoke about that. I think I remember hearing her testify also to the same thing.
She did.
Yeah. Which is good. And more than two. Yeah.
After the Soviets would be the terrorists. And now this was May 9th, 2001, when we disclosed this to the public. What happened 4 months later? 9/11. There's indications that, too, was a false flag. And then you have third world dictators. Then you've got extraterrestrials as the final card. And then, when the Bilderberg choice for presidency was working with the Benson Strategy Group, it was working with the Clinton Foundation. This was a leak by Anonymous on 2016, October 18th, that this document, what they were trying to do, they were afraid how to keep people, they knew that it wasn't going to turn out well, and they needed to figure out something to keep people from going to the polls. And so they were recommending a false flag alien invasion in order to, in fact, they had a whole bunch of different options that they were planning. And the document analyzes a number of salvage scenarios and recommends one called fire sign. Fire sign is a technology that creates this holographic, looks like aliens coming to invade, which is a false flag extraterrestrial invasion using holographic technology. The largest percentage, like there's a whole bunch of different things, like an Ebola outbreak or this or that. The one that had the most percentage was 38%, which was an attack by extraterrestrials. So there's like three little indications, and they had the technology to pull it off. In fact, Dr. Greer, has said, many times that they use the stagecraft to look like it's coming from, and this document kind of infers that the abductions are actually
not real, exactly.
MILAB type of operations.
Right.
So let's
that's
see.
The explosive nature of this whole thing, then, is this fact that this has now been fully documented and corroborated by people that are also living, not just dead, but these are also people that are still alive.
Admiral Tom Wilson is alive, and so is astrophysicist Eric Davis. They're both alive. Of course, no comment.
Exactly.
They didn't ever expect this to ever get leaked out. And you have to think about, To the Stars Academy. They're talking about, they're planning on researching this and stuff like that. Well, you have to think about, Ben Rich in 1993. He said, anything you can imagine, we already know how to do. We have the technology to take ET home, right?
But Dan,
Lockheed. Yes.
Okay, so here we have, like I say, here we have the DeLong thing last fall, where they kind of came out with Tic Tac, and now 6-8 months later, we've got this thing coming out. Do you see maybe that somebody is orchestrating this storyline, this architecting the story arc, that it's going to arrive somewhere, that maybe something else is going to be revealed as well? Do you think something else, or do you think there's going to be, in this whole story, this whole drama, that something else is going to pop? You think it's going to come? Is there an area you think might pop next?
Well, if you understand that the mainstream media is completely controlled by this group and all their outlet channels, and what they did with the 2001 National Press Club event and what they're doing now, when the November 2016, I think, the Tic Tac came out the first time, it's saturated. Even your grandmother knows about UFOs, now.
Exactly.
And
then we were talking about that, seeing it in People magazine, of all places. Like, they finally made it to People magazine.
All over, the mainstream newspapers. There's only 6 corporations that control mostly everything we see and hear.
Exactly.
So they have complete control of it. I don't.
What, Aage?
Just because everybody's getting on board with it now, it's very understandable that it is a planned event that is actually in the process of unfolding right before us. And we think that, wow, we're finally getting something. No, they've given it to us. And that's why I've been saying that disclosure will happen, but we're not going to get any of the big secrets. We're going to get what they allow us to see.
You have to look at the language of the mainstream media, what they're using. They're using the word threat a lot, the word threat a lot. And, I don't believe that the To the Stars Academy would be in support of this particular leak, because what they're saying is that they need, they got, Hal Puthoff, they got CIA, Lockheed people, they've got Air Force people, all those things. They're saying they need to research this and stuff like that. But, back in 2006, on July 6th, a patent or for a triangular spacecraft was published. Like the TR-3B that everybody, the triangular one, patent number US 20060145019. shows anti-gravity craft in detail of how it goes. And then just recently, last year, December 2018, on December 4th, the US Navy was granted a patent for an advanced anti-gravity aircraft design. Goes into the whole detail, which is patent US 1014453-2B2. And so they already have this technology. And so for them to...
what I'm thinking, and I'm kind of with Aage on this, and it's this drip controlled release of information that we think is aha moments, like you said too as well. That we get these supposed coincidental releases. So that's why I'm kind of curious where you guys think what might be next coming down the pike. You know, our amateur side is like, wow, there's been a revelation. But
I don't think there's anything coincidental about any of this. I think it is all planned.
Exactly.
I agree.
It's going to go away on them because it's going to get out of hand and not going to be able to control it. That's what I see happening.
Exactly. You have to have, you know, I've been studying this since I went to Washington. And when you see all of I like to call them just indicators, you know, and if you look back at a chronology and if you look at all the witness testimonies, you know, people, including admirals, generals, astronauts, you look at the leaked documents that have been authenticated, top secret MJ-12 documents. And so if you look at all that and you put it all together, it's kind of hard to fool you because you can start to see the indications that, you know, like this one group that's coming out with the media now with, you know, this alien threat in the Pentagon program, you know, $22 million, you know, into this Pentagon program. It's just a minuscule drop in a bucket. I mean, they put trillions and trillions of dollars into this. In fact, you know, the unacknowledged special access programs that were created hidden underneath the special access program. So they don't, no congressman or president or director or anything can gain access to these things. I think what is, so when they're talking about an alien threat, I mean, yeah, we're all still here. And if they were going to attack us, they would have attacked us a long time ago. So this whole threat scenario sure sounds like the old...
You know, I was going to mention that earlier, Dan. Isn't that what they said years ago, back in the 50s, that if we don't know what's in our skies, how can we defend the United States? And it was this constant we must protect the populace. We must protect the people. And so it's almost like they were afraid of losing credibility, that they could not stop an incoming alien or ET presence. They couldn't stop it. They had nothing. And that Roswell, according to some accounts, was a radar test that was designed to cripple those craft.
Right. Yeah, it was a Doppler radar that it was an FBI leak that they believed that was the radar from White Sands that took the Roswell down.
Right. So there was this whole machismo, if you will, or this kind of a macho, testosterone-based, we must protect the populace. We can't just tell them that ETs are coming. Why, they might like that. So they had to make it into a threat that they had to defend. And so that's been going on since whatever, the 40s or the 50s.
Well, if these good people that are trying to protect the populace, you know, if they have, you know, like Emery Smith is saying, some of the technology and many others, if they could release the 0-point energy, you know, back in, I think it was 96, when Dr. Greer met with CIA Director William Colby, who was coincidentally going to reveal indications that the Israeli Mossad was infiltrating into the CIA, and about the Franklin child case, about the CIA sex trafficking going on. He was going to reveal all this stuff. You know, it's very dangerous. And he also met with Stephen Greer 1 week before he was found face down, floating down the Potomac River at a boating accident. To give $50 million and an extraterrestrial derived 0-point energy device. So they've had the 0-point energy device. And they're the good people they would save millions of lives. If they could release the technology, we could create millions of jobs, retrofitting every home and business.
Right. But it was
Electric
their ego
vehicles.
that kept them from saying, wow, this is something outside of our control. We cannot control this. So we are going to be transparent about our contact with these entities. Instead, they buried all of it under this cloak of secrecy and everything else in their own ego, and then kept us all out of it. We've all been isolated away from it. You know,
Right.
it's
Well, if they
maddening.
were really looking out for the best of humanity, they know that if we get an EMP or CME from the sun, millions of people are going to die because of the grid system will act as a
Being
giant
failed. Yeah.
antenna. So for that reason, for one of many reasons, I don't think it is it's more of the black hats, than the white hats in this whole thing. And
Sure.
so, um, this situation is, as far as I can tell from the indications, that's all I can say, is that it looks like the corporations that worked along with Nazi Germany, worked along with the Nazis to infiltrate in and basically forced Eisenhower into an agreement. They one 1 year later, in 1956, is when Operation Deep Freeze happened, when they started moving all this stuff down to Antarctica. There's a spaceport down there. And so what's happened is, after they restructured everything, made it all secret, with these deep underground military bases, and you notice that the current administration is doing a lot for human rights abuse. And it appears one of the reasons why they don't want this whole thing to come out and the full story is because of the human rights abuse that has been going on. In other words, slave labor works very good for the corporate bottom line. And you think about all the missing people that are going on. What's going on down this deep underground military
Well, it
facility?
may not just be there, but it may be on other planets. This is also part of the speculation.
Well, if you
The
had
space program.
anti-gravity in the early 1950s, why would you not have bases on the moon, as Dr. Carl Wolf testified along with myself? And why would you not have
According to
bases
some of
on
these secret space
Mars?
program people, there are bases on Mars, multiple bases, not just one or two, multiple bases
Right.
on Mars that are doing manufacturing, building spacecraft and building other things off on Mars. They've got
Yeah.
facilities.
And there's several people talking about the jump rooms, and apparently
Right.
they have worked out the teleportation details. I mean, you can imagine the most brilliant minds brought into these things with not the science that we get in education, but the science of the complete understanding and especially working with advanced extraterrestrial races that are way ahead of us. You can imagine how far they have leaped ahead. It's incomprehensible to the average person. And that is why this whole subject keeps its own best secrecy, because it is so far removed from our daily reality that we've been indoctrinated from birth. And
That's the
so it
key.
keeps its own best secrecy because of it's
But when you start
so
to
different.
unravel basic logic, when people start to look up in the sky and they go, well, you think we could be alone? And then they start doing some common sense logic deduction, and you say to yourself, there's absolutely no way we would be alone. The odds of us being alone are so minuscule compared to the odds that we would be among other sentient beings in this galaxy and in the cosmos. It just makes sense after you stop and you slap yourself. All that indoctrination about it can't be possible. Nah, there's nothing going on. All that BS that we have been pumped with, that about our natural world that isn't quite accurate. There's things about it that aren't quite accurate, but that's the one thing, building up this immunization in people's heads that there is no such thing as ETs, there is no such thing as ETs, there's no such thing as aliens. It's just sci-fi. That programming has been very difficult to crack, but I think it's cracking.
Well, and you think about the control factor, what was it? Roosevelt put the eye on the pyramid on the dollar.
Right.
You have this pyramidal structure, chain of command, that you think about the 300 corporations, the 300 families that own all these corporations. Well, and you think about, when Adolf Hitler got together in a meeting with the Dulles brothers, John and Alan, and all of the big banks that basically got him going, IG Farben and all the rest of them.
Right.
It's the money of the corporations, and it's the people with the agenda that control from the tire up, that's connected with these transnational corporations that give the marching orders to these people. And so it appears that whatever is up on the upper chain that basically took over control through these corporations, using the Nazis as a vehicle for this whole thing, that way back, then. But today we've got this corporate element that's completely, as Richard Dolan calls it, a breakaway civilization that has broken away from the rest of humanity and keeping all these operations secret with super advanced technology that could help heal the planet, improve the life of everyone on this planet. But they only can do this through secrecy. The last thing they want is disclosure. And this document is a key document that shows how this structure is keeping our legal constitutional government, which is what the United States is about, right? It's about our Constitution and oversight from our government and checks and balances, right? And so you have this corporate entities that have basically hijacked our world for decades of technologies and is running completely separate. While we have, Fukushimas and Gulf oil spills and, pollution and, and we have this retarded technology, that
Right.
so, I mean,
Right. Yeah,
you're still
it's
using
almost like you
gasoline.
don't want to know anymore about what you know, because you're thinking, okay, it's kind of like in that movie, The Matrix, where Schaefer decides he wants to just go back in his pod. Can you just make me wealthy? I just want to go back to my pod. It's like this battle against this, whatever this overarching control mechanism is, whether it's, quote, the Cabal or the unseen hand that seems to keep humanity down, whatever you want to call it.
Oh yeah,
And
watching science fiction and sports and keeping us occupied.
right.
Don't look at this document and what that man's saying. This is all
It's interesting because,
conspiracy theories.
what was it, 40 years ago, maybe more, there was the hippie thing. I can't believe it was more than 40 years ago. It's even amazing saying that by itself. But in that movement, one of the common phrases was question authority. And you weren't supposed to trust anybody over 30.
Yeah, I'm 70
Okay.
now.
Exactly. Now think about that. That was one of the bywords, was question authority. Now we have people who have become so politically polarized that they're not stopping and taking a pause. That's what I find alarming. People are not. They're allowing all this emotional hyperbole and emotional swell to moving us in directions I don't think we really want to go. I see us being architected into another military confrontation in Iran. I see things happen. I'm like, to me, it's mind-boggling.
Oh yeah, this whole thing in Iran, it's just like deja vu of when I was had to go to
The run up to
Vietnam
Iraq.
because the Gulf of Tonkin, which
Yeah.
58,000 young guys lost their lives on, and millions of Vietnamese. Uh, this stuff's got to stop. These wars. We
Well,
have.
I think this is good that this level of disclosure is occurring, whether it was meant to be leaked or it was just leaked for whatever reason, regardless of the motivations. I think that it's kind of like a cascade effect. I'm hoping happens, because as that happens, somebody says, "Well, you know what? I got even more," and somebody else starts to clean out some storage lockers, and some documents start to come out. That's what I'm hopeful for. This was either, whether it was planned or not, whether it was architected or not, I'm glad it's happening.
Well, the
I
White
think
Hat's.
What's that,
we're
Augie?
in the middle of a long-term it's been disclosure more or less since back in the 1950s. You may remember this memorandum to the U.S. Government's, the director of the FBI, Guy Hotel. That was, I think, 1953. There was one of the investigators that came with some information on the thing at Roswell, and they're saying there, an investigator wrote this, and he said there were three so-called flying saucers that has been received and recovered in New Mexico, and they described as being circular in shape with raised centers, 50 foot in diameter. Fact that it was occupied by three bodies of human shaped but only 3 foot tall, dressed in metallic clothing and a very fine texture. Each body was, it goes on to explain what was there. This is a document that was written to the head of the FBI, and I know it's real because I wrote to the FBI and got a copy of it. So I know that. So it's been going on since 1950s until now. So it's coming out. There's no way to stop it.
Oh, it's hidden in plain sight, and a lot of the viewers on Broadcast Team Alpha, way past ET 101, they know the subject's real. They're just trying to figure out what's the whole game going on behind this thing. What's being manipulated? Why, if we have these advanced technologies, which many witnesses have attested to, and I've had firsthand experience and seen some of these technologies work, and had people from the CIA said this works, you're dead, type of thing. There is a definite effort to keep us in a technological suppressed bubble while they advance extremely. And so, this is what's coming into awareness with documents of this nature, that our legal government, and that's the word to use, our legal constitutional government has essentially been infiltrated by these transnational corporations that have taken in, according to Catherine Austin Fitts, like there's trillions of dollars. And so, and we have a situation where they were spending billions of dollars into think tanks with the CIA, engineering our perceptions on the media channels, and they have certain editors.
Dan, you are wise to it, and thank you for bringing this out every time you talk, because you're wise to it and you're making other people wise to it, and this is why we do what we do, to make other people wise to these schemes and these plans that they have. Even if we don't know the technical details, we're at least putting out the signal to others that are curious. Do a little digging like we have. Like, for example, this document is out there, and it can be downloaded, and it's easy to read. Whoever, and I maybe give a little provenance about where it's at. It's on Imgur, I think is what the site is. They've just kind of pushed it out.
If you go to
public document sites,
go to thewebmatrix.net,
and you've got them
and
there
go to 2002, and I have a whole bunch of links and references and a whole bunch of things.
Okay, great. Do you have the actual document on your site?
Yes.
Oh, you do? Oh, very good. Very good. Yeah, I think more people.
Yeah, the document's too long to read. I'm just giving some of the highlights that I think the most explosive element of this is, beside it's no big surprise, I think, to the listeners that they have technology that's extraterrestrial, or the reverse engineering. That's no big deal.
That we're all on the page with that. We get that. Now we're trying to we are in a sense mobilizing through shows like this and others that are out there that we've all been involved in. We're trying to mobilize people, or maybe we're not, I don't know. We are having a giant conversation, let's put it that way. And maybe it will mobilize people to start asking more questions of their senators, their congressmen, their elected officials. I don't know where we go.
They're out of the loop. When I happen to know the president of the former president of Lockheed International. I did his computer system for him, and they're in San Diego. And so I sat down with him for 4 hours with the executive briefing video that we were giving to the Pentagon, and he watched the entire thing. I mean, Lockheed, they're like the major player in all this thing. I was hoping he could contribute as a witness. He would be like a major but no cigar there, but he did offer his mansion when I toured with Dr. Greer across the United States. At least I did it in the Western United States, all the major cities, where they sanitized it every single time we were reviewing all this stuff. He opened his mansion up for an executive party, which we catered in some Indian food and talked about this whole thing. And he was very interested, to see what was going on. But what happens is people don't have time to write letters, so I did an online fax. 30,000, I created this online fax with a programmer friend, and 30,000 faxes went into the president and the representatives and senators on this whole thing. And because people don't have time to write letters and emails get deleted, so it was
great,
the
Dan.
next best option.
Yeah.
And so I had people send me, I have over 50 some responses from the president, and which you can find on the webmatrix.net as well, and read all the responses. Basically, it becomes very clear they're completely out of the loop, which you would imagine if presidents and heads of intelligence are out of the loop. And they're basically citing Project Blue Book, way back in 60s, and that NASA official denials that, we couldn't have technology faster than the speed of light and all this stuff, So they go all these, they give the senators and representatives these official denials how to respond to this whole thing. It became very obvious after you start looking all the letters of, we'll keep your views in mind should extraterrestrial hearings, go in Congress. So yeah, we have a complete government that is completely out of the loop, and we have these rogue operations that are underneath our feet that are taking in trillions of our taxpayer dollars and other unaccounted for sources.
They just print what they want on demand. Hey, real quick.
Oh yeah, true.
Real quick, we want to give a shout out. We haven't really done it. We normally do shout outs to the chat room. Okay, you've been there busy, I think, Nori. We've got some of our regular folks are there. It's good to see. So yeah, very cool.
Val, Nancy.
Nancy mentioned Daryl Sims, and Daryl Sims. I remember Kate Torvaldsen interviewed Daryl Sims about 8 months ago. Maybe 6 months ago. Nancy, if you get a chance, go to Kate Torvaldsen's channel and check out her interview she did with Daryl Sims. Very cool. So it's good to see you mention that.
Yeah, Ben Guy is hanging out with us, and Artemis is here, and yeah, it's been pretty active in the chat room.
And Nancy
People
says
are talking
Dan
about
is the man.
Absolutely, he so is the man. Yes, he's so the man.
I got another thought. And the thought is going to surface as a question to Dan. What do you think? We know it's going to happen. It is happening. We have government documents and we have testimonies. What is going to happen when it becomes common knowledge that, yes, first of all, we're not alone, and they've been lying to us since the beginning of time, about 3 weeks before? Now, what are we going to do when we find this out? What do you think people will do? What will they say? What do you think?
Well, it seems it's quite apparent that the mainstream media is supporting this controlled, limited disclosure. And I'm kind of concerned about they keep using the word threat, because it hasn't been any threat, and they've known about it. Acting like they're acting like it's something new, when they've been dealing with this for decades. And so what's the upshot the takeaway from all this is that, yes, we have an illegal rogue operations that have super highly advanced technology that the world needs to have released and to benefit from. But our illegal constitutional government is not allowed access to this. And all this is done under the guise of national security. So, it's concerning what the media is coming out with, because the media doesn't support something unless it's got the go-ahead from up. They got green lighted. And the verbiage and the fact that, there's a whole lot of suspicious elements going on with it. So you just have to be, like Eisenhower said, only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can protect our future liberties and freedoms. And so,
We have it.
yeah, but there's this collective mind, as we're all aware of, that the more we're reaching some minds today, and they can do their own research, and then it starts clicking, and because every mind is connected to every other mind, and like this holofractal reality that we live in, and so it propagates in the morphogenic field and so we have that alternative media besides. They're desperately trying to control the perceptions on the alternative media, as we all know, with all the things Facebook, YouTube, Google, and Instagram, and a whole bunch is doing.
Tech
Do you
tyranny.
think that? Do you think people actually will be good with this when it becomes out, common knowledge? We think people say, okay, gosh, hey, we got aliens, so pass the butter, Martha. Would they be just okay with it, or would they say, wait a minute, they've been lying to us all these years. What else have they been lying about? I want to know. And throw the pitchforks in the back of the pickup truck and drive to Washington. What do you think?
I think people pretty much, have to, a lot of people are just trying to deal with day-to-day stuff and just trying to pay the bills and that sort of thing. And unless it impacts them directly, see, when the National Press Club covered it the way it is about the reality of UFOs, the average person sitting back on the couch watching the evening news and said, oh, wow, Dr. Greer gathered, 500 witnesses. Well, good for him. Well, yeah, we should find out about UFOs, but I got more important. I gotta figure out, wait, I gotta pay electric bills. I've got my gasoline bills, and all these things affect me personally directly. And so there's no association that there's advanced technologies that could completely change our entire civilization on this planet, to bring it up to speed from it has been purposely through our education system, through the sciences, through everything has just been.
You can't run a marathon when you're chained to a treadmill.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, a lot of people, have their lives all packaged up very nicely, and kind of everything is metered out, like with retirement and vacations and golf trips, and so I mean there's a whole part of the population that this would be very inconvenient for. Not that they can avoid it. But.
You know what, though? I think it's a good thing, because I think as disclosure happens, and Aage mentioned this, then to support something Aage mentioned was the fact that, oh yeah, UFO landed on the White House lawn, past the margarine, please. Mm-hmm. Actually, that's not a bad thing. I think that's where we really want to go with disclosure, because I think, wasn't that the overriding myth, was that disclosure was going to set mankind into a cascade of turmoil that was going to be a massive panic. Oh my God, we're not alone. Oh, but dear God and Jesus don't exist anymore. Oh my God, Buddha was all a lie. That it's all going to cave in on itself. And maybe it's not. Maybe the acclimation process has immunized enough of the population to accept this idea of extraterrestrials, and maybe when they see real extraterrestrials, they've seen enough sci-fi already, they've seen enough stuff that they're immunized.
Right. This is not 1938 with War of the Worlds with Orson Welles. There were people jumping out of windows and stuff like that. People have been acclimated. In fact, I've actually seen documents where there was a phase where there was a whole bunch of alien stuff all over the place. And what they were saying is that it's making people who are researchers or are aware of this stuff feel like, oh, good, the information's getting out there. And it's making the mainstream people who have no idea about this to try to make it more warm and fuzzy and everyday kind of reality. So it's kind of acclimating them.
Isn't it interesting? You had two TV sci-fi show programs come out in the last couple of years. One is The Orville, which is Star Trek doing what we might call social studies, interaction with people and relationships in science fiction land. And then you have Star Trek Discovery, which is all the tech and all of the kind of some of the larger questions. Instead of the more interpersonal, it really kind of explored some of the larger intergalactic relationships. It was interesting that both of them were kind of specifically focused on a particular aspect all at the same time.
You can imagine, we have on this planet, people are having issues with just variations of this particular, you know, Asian, black, all the different races that we have on this planet. People, some people have issues with it. Most evolved people don't. And you can imagine if you're going to bring somebody in, what I understand from Emery Smith is that he was briefed that there's 100,000 extraterrestrials that are integrated working among us, right now. And they're all keeping it quiet. And as the Prime Minister of Russia leaked, that there's, they know about all of them. They know where they're at. And they're based inside of mountains and stuff. And
some of them are showing up on doorbell cams.
on what?
On those doorbell cams you can buy, those little Nest or whatever they are, the little doorbell camera that
Oh, really?
there was a video posted recently. It showed, and it's hard to say whether it was real or not. It could have been real. I don't know. There's too much CGI stuff out there, but shows this little ET wandering around in somebody's driveway and then kind of wanders off.
As the real stuff escalates and comes out more, because there's cameras everywhere now, which there wasn't in the decades past.
You've seen one on your camera now. Okay, so now you won't be shocked. Okay, we got it covered.
The disinformation and the CGI, like you say, is escalating as well. But it's. I've seen them fly, 100 feet over my head, and I've seen them a number of times. So I don't know if they were alien reproduction vehicles or ETVs, extraterrestrial vehicles. But there's definitely, advanced craft that we don't need, jet fuel, to get from point A to point B. I hate flying. It's like it takes like so many hours to go from one place to another. Where you can just
do point to point. We just pop in, pop out. In fact, wasn't it one of the more recent Star Trek movies that kind of recreates the Captain Kirk era? They kind of zoom in on the Starfleet Academy, and as you're coming in overhead, I thought it was very clever. They showed somebody walking into a transporter booth that there would be as common as a Lyft or an Uber is now. That they just kind of showed somebody wandering in and punches a button, and poof, he walks into the booth and he's gone. He went to wherever his destination was. It could have been anywhere on the planet. And I hope we can get there.
They've been busy seeding our mind for some time. That was Leslie Stevens feeding Gene Roddenberry, who Leslie Stevens connected Office of Naval Intelligence and the whole.
Roddenberry also had ET contactee experiencers too. He had a guy, Wes Bateman, was another one of his feeds. So he had multiple feeds coming in, which I guess after a while you're the leader of the most popular sci-fi show for it was like 3 years, but they peaked. But I'm sure he had a lot of people coming in with information.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Please.
Nancy just said that the White House is on lockdown. What's up with that? I don't know if this is breaking news and we don't know about it, or Nancy's trying to pull a joke on us. Wait, let's see.
An alien invasion.
Would this be perfectly timed or what?
Yeah. We're standing by and broadcasting Alpha Control here.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Nancy. I hope that nothing bad is going on. So
I'll have to watch on the evening propaganda.
Check it out.
Exactly,
we're kind of running long in the tooth here. Normally longer than we normally go.
Thank you. This was really good.
Oh, it's been great. So what are we going to do with this? What's everybody going to do with this information now that we know that there's this
what I want to know.
illegal operation going on that has withholding advanced technology from the rest of humanity? What are we going to do about it?
What can we do about it?
We need to keep spreading the word.
Spread information.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Research. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's
not a theory. You can prove it.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna tell everybody in the grocery store. I might need bail money, but yeah, you guys come get me.
So
No,
I
you've been
encourage
rather.
everybody. I was just going to say, I encourage everybody to do their own research. Don't take anybody particular's word for anything. My notes with references at thewebmatrix.net. And just a media company wanted me to write an article about. I used to be an ABC newsman. Who controls the agreed upon reality through the mainstream media, and why they fear disclosing the truth about the extraterrestrial reality? All these years, I've been adding notes to it in a chronological timeline and with references, and I'm just sharing it with other people. I don't make any money at this. I don't sell any books or CDs or make any movies, but but I think it's really important for future humanity to become awake and aware of what's going on.
So d- actually, there's a better place for me to share the information rather than the grocery store, because here in this little town, well, maybe not so little, is Barbara Marciniak, and she has bi-monthly meetings, and you can't even take your telephone in to any of her meetings. And the people that attend these meetings are like really, you know, deep thinkers and very knowledgeable and very researched. So I will definitely carry a lot of the information tonight there. And just a quickie, the White House goes on a brief lockdown after a person is arrested by the Secret Service. That was 6 hours ago. So
Mm.
Okay.
All right.
Fun.
Any last thoughts on this major leak of the century document? Anybody has any questions?
Yeah, anybody in the chat room? Dan, thank you so much. This was just so awesome.
Dan, this has been,
pleasure.
yeah, we needed an authority on this to kind of give us a little
I'm not an
guidance on
authority. I'm just a researcher.
this. You're our guy. Now, every
You
show
are a guy.
has a guy they can call. You're that guy. So we appreciate it big time.
I'm just one top secret military witness out of hundreds, just wanting the public to know
We got
what's
to have one.
going on.
So you're that guy. Okay, we got to have one. So you're our guy. No, we appreciate it big time. Hopefully, it's given some other people some inspiration and guidance about researching this on their own, kind of digging in. The resources are out there, and you can always contact us through the website or through Facebook or whatever. Dan is available at thewebmatrix.net. So we'll put that in the description in the video. And if you would, we humbly appreciate every subscriber that subscribes. You folks are pure gold to us. We appreciate you. All the folks in the chat room, thank you very much. Nancy, Margaret, Philip, I'm sure was here. I'm sure I don't have everybody's name, but we appreciate all of you. So any kind of support you can give. Support Dan. Dan comes out with some amazing papers and research on it on his own website. He kind of downplays it, but we're going to brag on Dan a little bit. This guy's an amazing researcher, so give Dan as much support as you can. And I don't
support me by researching.
Thank you. We will. I will.
Okay. All right, cool. So unless anybody else has anything last minute here, I'm going to hit the old goodbye.
Well, we covered a lot today, and I think this is going to fester in our mind for a while, and maybe another month or so, Dan's going to be back with a new story for us.
I always love being on Broadcast Team Alpha. It's my
I think it's been encouraging for all of us that something has happened. Something has moved. The meter has moved a little bit. Even if it moved an inch, it's moved a little bit. So I think that's encouraging to all of us. So.
Yeah, it's important we educate so we don't get deceived. And we have to remember that secrecy serves corruption, and disclosure serves
freedom, truth,
Exactly.
liberty, and justice, and the American way. I don't know if I want to say the American way anymore.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Dan.
And we'll see you folks next week or sooner. Who knows when we will be back. Thanks again.
See you.